Welcome to the history of the United States of America, from the earliest people who walked the land, to a global power today. In this video, you'll learn not just what happened but why it mattered. Before, there was a country called the United States. This land was full of lives, communities, and history. Thousands of years ago, people crossed from Asia into North America over a land bridge that existed during the Ice Age. Over generations, these people spread across the continent and formed diverse cultures, from the Mississippian mound builders to the Pueblos of the Southwest and the Iroquois Confederacy in the Northeast. These societies had their own traditions, trade networks, languages, and systems of government. They lived on this land for centuries, long before any European ship arrived. In 1492, Christopher Columbus arrived in the Caribbean, opening the Americas to European exploration, though he was not the first human here, and the land was already inhabited. Spain, France, England, and the Netherlands all established colonies. European settlement brought new technology and animals, major diseases that devastated indigenous populations, competition for land and resources. England eventually built 13 colonies along the Atlantic coast. Life in the colonies was hard, from cold winters to crop shortages, but over time, communities took root. The 13 British colonies each developed in different ways, some based on farming, others on trade or religion. But they shared common issues: harsh living conditions, conflicts with native groups, growing dissatisfaction with British rules. Meanwhile, the transatlantic slave trade brought millions of Africans to work on plantations, especially in the South, creating a system that would shape American society for centuries. By the mid-1700s, Britain was heavily taxing the colonies, but the colonists had no voice in Parliament. This gave rise to the slogan, "No taxation without representation." Tensions exploded with events like the Boston Massacre and the Boston Tea Party. In 1774, colonial leaders met at the First Continental Congress, and in 1776, they declared independence from Britain. This document, the Declaration of Independence, stated that all men are created equal with rights that no government can take away. The Revolutionary War followed, and by 1783, the United States had won its independence. After independence, the United States had big questions. How should government work? How much power should it have? The answer came in 1787 with the U.S. Constitution, a document that created a central government with 3 branches and a system of checks and balances. A Bill of Rights was added to protect individual freedoms. This period also featured early leaders like George Washington, the first president; Thomas Jefferson, author of the Declaration; Alexander Hamilton, an architect of America's financial system. But the Constitution did not end slavery, even though it allowed the phrase, "All men are created equal." Slavery remained legal and deeply embedded in American society. In the early 1800s, the United States doubled its size with the Louisiana Purchase in 1803, buying vast lands from France. This opened the way for westward expansion. Settlers moved west in search of land and opportunity. However, this expansion displaced indigenous peoples, leading to conflict and forced removals like the Trail of Tears. By the mid-1800s, the question of whether new states would allow slavery pushed the nation closer to conflict. Differences between the North and South erupted into the Civil War in 1861, largely over the issue of slavery. The northern states fought to preserve the Union and eventually to end slavery. In 1863, President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, freeing slaves in rebelling states. When the war ended in 1865, slavery was abolished in the whole nation. The years after were called Reconstruction, an attempt to rebuild the South and extend civil rights to former slaves. Though laws were passed, white resistance and discrimination continued. After the Civil War, America transformed into an industrial nation. Railroads connected coasts. Factories produced steel, oil, textiles. Cities grew rapidly. Millions of immigrants from Europe and Asia arrived seeking new opportunities. This era brought economic growth, but also poverty, unsafe working conditions, and political corruption. In World War I, the United States helped the Allies win. In World War II, America played a leading role in defeating Axis powers. After World War II, the U.S. emerged as a global superpower, politically, economically, and militarily. Although laws had changed, segregation and discrimination continued into the 20th century. In the 1950s and 1960s, leaders like Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, and Malcolm X pushed for civil rights through protests, marches, and legal challenges. Their efforts led to major reforms like the Civil Rights Act, ending legal segregation and expanding voting rights. After World War II, the U.S. entered the Cold War with the Soviet Union, a long rivalry that shaped foreign policy and technology. The space race put Americans on the moon in 1969. In the late 20th century, the digital revolution created new industries and transformed daily life. Today, the United States is a leading world power, known for technology and innovation, cultural influence, scientific achievement. Yet it still faces challenges: political division, inequality, debates over identity and justice. Its history is complex, a mix of ideals and contradictions, and continues to evolve.